Well, welcome back, everyone. This is the second part of our town hall. We are back with Doctors Renee Boynton-Jarrett and Marianne Wolf, and we are going to hear more from them, sort of piggybacking or continuing along with the conversation that we started in part one. But I want to welcome everyone who's just joining us. We had a really interesting discussion, a really fantastic discussion in part one of our town hall, which was all about children in the birth to five space. How can we be better with children? How can we be better in the community? How can educators, how can families be better with and for children? And so if you didn't get an opportunity to join in at 4 with us, we will have the playback available on Facebook Live so you can watch at any time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm just going to reintroduce our expert panel before we get started. And I am Ryan Lee James. I'm the director of the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy at the Atlanta Speech School. So first, I will start with Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett. Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett is a pediatrician, social epidemiologist, and she has created and developed with her colleagues at Boston Medical a community engagement network for families. Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett is also a mom, and so we're so grateful to have her with us this afternoon. She's going to talk to us more about why relationships are so important in development. We're also going to get into a little bit of a discussion on social and emotional health as a basic human right for our children in the birth to 5, as well as the K to 3rd space. So welcome, Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett. Our other expert that we have, and both of these fantastic women are dear friends of the speech school. So we're we're like a big family, but happy to be with them. Dr. Marianne Wolf. Dr. Wolf is a neuroscientist and literacy advocate. She is the director of the Center for Dyslexia, Diverse Learners, and Social Justice at UCLA. Dr. Wolf will be talking to us this afternoon a little bit about technology and the reading brain and the relationship between technology and reading. And we are huge fans at the Speech School of her most recent work, Reader Come Home. So welcome, both of you. Again, excited to continue this conversation. So Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett, I'm wondering if you can start us off again. For our folks who are just joining us, I really would love for you to share out, again, at the risk of being redundant, but it was so fantastic, how we can find our way into a child's mind, into a child's heart, and into a child's brain during this challenging time. We know our country's been going through a lot lately, and everybody is sort of asking, what can I do for the children in my life? And so if you could just share a little bit about that for this audience, that would be great.
Yeah. So as I shared earlier, most of us have never used the word pandemic this much or ever imagined that we'd be using this word this much. But one thing we know is that COVID-19 has affected all of us. So all of our plans, our hopes, our dreams have been impacted. We also know now definitively that COVID-19 has had a disparate impact on different communities, on communities of color, on lower income communities. It has gone right down the social fissures and inequities within our society and widened them. And that was made possible by another pandemic, one that's hidden in plain sight, and that's of structural inequities within our society, including structural racism. So it may feel that there's some degree of randomness between the past few weeks of racial tensions and the past few months of COVID-19. I would say that these are actually aligned because of a building sense of that we have to reckon with what happens when we do not do the work we need to as a society to create an equitable, safe, resilient community for every child to thrive in. And if we're not doing that work, the risk is that something like COVID-19 can come along and really even set us back so much further in terms of enrichment, educational time lost, opportunities lost during this very critical window of early childhood. And hidden amidst all of these things that are going on in our deep sense of uncertainty are how kids are doing. And I think one of the things we'll be talking about today is that what children really need is our presence, is our commitment, is our investment in them. And there aren't these other kind of solutions out there. It's really going to be the work that we are willing to do as a society and as a collective to make sure all children can thrive. Because anywhere that an injustice exists for one child, it actually is a threat to the well-being, health, and life chances of another child as well. So.
Thank you for that. And again, I'll just add something that I didn't say at the beginning of the second part that you said for me, so thank you, but just to reemphasize that the purpose of us coming together this afternoon as a community, families, educators, all of us coming together on this live town hall is to say that we can't go back, we can't continue to interact with children in the ways that we have been, that in order for us to be better with our children and for our children, we have to put them top of mind. And I think that families and educators in our community, we do have our children top of mind, but it's being more intentional about how we are with our children. And so gathering together in this town hall event is really to say, how can we be better for our community of children? So thank you. Dr. Wolf, I think you were going to chime in, and I hope you will.
Every time I hear Dr. Boynton Jarrett talk or you, my mind is just flooded with ideas, and it's just wrestling. What's the most important thing I want to say? Well, I'm going to say one thing that is a segue from Dr. Boynton Jarrett's discussion of the inequities and the non-coincidental nature of having twin epidemics at the same time. That is the virus and the exposing of systemic racism. And I had mentioned earlier that there were films by a woman named Christine Herby Solmers for PBS. And one of her films was a 4-point series called Unnatural Causes: Is Inequality Making Us Sick? And I would suggest that that plus some of her work on the effects of trauma all the way through the lifespan can be connected to this town hall. Is inequality making our children unable to learn and are to learn to their potential? And I think that's the real important thing that I want to make the segue to my remarks. And my remarks are going to be pretty harsh right now about Atlanta and Los Angeles and our country. But if we look at what is called the National Assessment for Educational Performance or Progress, those are called the nation's report cards. Well, Atlanta looks like it has a discrepancy like few others between the children who are Caucasian and the children of color. So that if you think about what is our goal, that's proficient, deep reading brains, if you will. 71% of our kids who are in the category of Caucasian are reaching those levels, while 23% of our Latino kids are, and 16% of our kids who are African American. I'm a dyslexia scholar. This is not about dyslexia. This is about a failure of society to provide the same educational experience. And as Dr. Boynton and Jarrett and I spoke earlier, they come with, so many of our children come with a gap before school begins. So what are some of the things that we can, during this moment, that town hall is like a moment in a moment to reflect. What can we do? Well, we can do things as a society that are going to be absolutely changing the game. That's going to be the overarching goal. But then there are goals that all of the parents and educators right now can do that in a way gives us this terrible moment of twin pandemics, gives us a chance to examine ourselves, to take our own measure. So when you look at the statistics in Atlanta, when you look at the nation, that the nation's report card says only 1/3 of our kids, let's just forget Atlanta, the whole country, only 1/3 of our kids in 4th grade and 8th grade are reaching these proficient levels where we can expect a person to ultimately be critically analytic and empathic. It's not happening for 2/3 of our future generation. So maybe this moment, this terrible moment, is a real examination of conscience about what you call, what is the top of the mind? Well, the last trip, ironically, I made was not, it's not an irony, it's the best form of irony, but the Pope, this Pope Francis, and this has nothing to do with religion as such, but everything to do with what is the moral conscience of our world, said that we must develop a new compact for education. This is before the pandemic. This is what his version of how can we change society to reach for what Aristotle called the good society. And it has to begin with, as Margaret Mead said, tell me what you do with your children and your elderly, and I will give you an idea of what your society is. Well, his concept is that we are not applying our science, our knowledge, to the poor and the disenfranchised around the world, and that we need a new compact of meaning in education that begins with a whole return to the respect for our teachers, the respect for ensuring our teachers have the knowledge they need to give the potential of every child. I'm going to say something I almost never say publicly. I went to school in a little town that was poverty driven. I went to school in a 2-room schoolhouse with 2 teachers, one who did 1 to 4, one who did 5 to 8. By the 8th grade, there were 8 of us, but out of that 8, we have 3 PhDs. Why? Because those teachers were respected by the people in the community, because the teachers never gave up on any child. And it began, in this case, with reading. No child from grades 1 to 4 was allowed not to learn to read. And this is something that I just, I shouldn't talk this much because I really want to hear Dr. Boynton-Jarrett talk more than myself. But we have a reading brain that needs our attention to the knowledge, the science of reading. We need to give our educators an understanding that the reading brain is formed by all these regions being developed from 0 to 5 and then being addressed, not putting teachers' approaches in 2 camps, which is such an unfortunate thing that's happened over the last years, but to give our understanding that the reading brain has multiple components. Each of those areas has to be systematically, explicitly taught by our teachers alongside an engagement, the inspiration, the joy of reading. So it's like putting science and poetry and relationship. And I'm going to listen to you, Dr. Boynton-Jarrett, about the relationships that are so necessary at the base of this. But all those linguistic, cognitive, motoric, affective, all of those processes have to be, and I didn't say visual, all of it has to be brought together by teachers who know how to teach all of that. Because once they know that, they can look and see individual children who are struggling in the particular areas and not assume that one size fits all, because it never does. That's enough. We can come back. I get carried away.
Yeah, and we will need to come back, especially to the last part that you said about the explicit teaching of reading, because we really, as you talk about the respect for teachers in our society and how that respect manifests as making sure our teachers are most prepared.
Absolutely.
From our higher education institutions, from our preparation programs. So we definitely have to come back to that. But I want to highlight something you said about your experience in grade school and how you and a few of your colleagues were really able to excel in spite of, because of a teacher or teachers who never gave up.
Right.
So this piece about teachers, I want to ask Dr. Boyne-Jarrett to speak to this in terms of why a teacher may or may not give up, how implicit bias impacts a teacher's mind to say, this person's going to be able to do it and that person's not. How does implicit bias or implicit biases play a role in this? And I should add, right before you get started, that we're thinking about, as Dr. Wolf pointed out, our Black children in this country, our African American, our Latino children, children who are immigrants, children who speak other languages. How are teachers' biases playing a role in their persistence?
So let's start from the beginning. Why do teachers teach, right? Because they want to make a difference in the lives of their children, right? That is why you go into teaching. Implicit biases are implicit. They're not conscious biases. They're not decisions you're making about which child is smart and which child is not, which child is good and which child is bad. They're implicit, so they're not being consciously engaged, but they're engaging in a way that influences behavior. It influences the tone of voice when you speak to a child. It influences the response to probably an identical behavior, right? And so we need to begin with a foundation of kindness and humility that appreciates why people go into teaching, and then thinks about, well, what is the kind of system or structure that would support teachers to do their best, given our understanding of implicit biases? And my argument around this is, what happens when you get an implicit bias training? They go away? No, you become aware that you have implicit biases, but an implicit bias training doesn't erase your biases. We need to have other things in place within our society and within our school systems that really support teachers and help put a check on implicit biases that we know we all have. So what are things that systems can do to help support the best for all teachers? Well, one thing that can be done is professional development. So really helping teachers move from behavior to understanding the root cause of behavior and having pathways to do that, and then having the backup within the early care center or within the school system to respond to that root cause is really important to empowering their ability to sustain in this work. We need to understand vicarious trauma. So for teachers who work with children who've experienced profound traumas, that can have a deep impact on them emotionally as people. There can be a vicarious impact of that trauma because of the caring, close attachment and relationships that teachers form with their students. So we need to understand that and support teachers in that, or it can create levels of burnout that are unhealthy and self-protective behaviors that create distance between teachers and their students. In order for children to learn optimally, it is in relationship. So just as Dr. Wolf described around reading, the first thing is the memory and the emotional affect. It isn't exactly the words. It's how you feel when someone you care about reads that story. So if we think about circle time in any classroom, how do we keep children in those effective, deep relationships so then learning can be accessed? But it really begins with a foundation where you feel safe, you feel trusted, and you feel seen and respected. And that's mutual for teacher and for child. And so we really do have to think about what happens when you grow up in a society where race matters, where race is a factor. It is a social construct that has meaning. So we need to recognize that, acknowledge that, and then build strategies to really support teachers to meet the goal that they set out to, which is to promote the education, learning, and well-being of children, and for children to really meet that goal as well. But these are dyadic relationships. So children will say, the teacher doesn't like me. And it's not because the teacher said, I don't like you. It is because of how they feel in that relationship. And so we really have to understand that some of this isn't about what we say. It's about how we are in relationship together and being willing to be open to grow.
Wow. I should have a comment, but I don't, except for yes, yes, yes. And we didn't really touch on it in the first part about implicit biases, but I assume that these happen from very early on, even in early learning centers. This is not necessarily just relevant for the K-3 space.
Right.
No, we do see this having an impact on disciplinary practices and expulsions, even in preschool age. And some of those biases have to do with the way in which we view a child. So we know from research that Black boys are more likely to be viewed as older than their age by several months or several years as they get older. So if you view a child as developmentally more mature than their developmental stage, your expectations for their behaviors are misaligned with where they are. So these things all have an impact in profound ways. When we think about childhood, one of the hallmarks of childhood is innocence, that a child makes a mistake, but not as trying to be malicious. So when we think about what behaviors are viewed as malicious, troublesome, intentionally trying to disrupt or be bad, that also takes away another protection that children have in our society. So we see that in our criminal justice system, who gets tried as an adult. We're one of the few countries in the world where children can be tried as an adult or sentenced to solitary confinement, things like that. So part of that does have to do with our view on culpability and innocence and intentional behaviors. And those can be associated with implicit biases about race as well. And so if we can understand that, we can respond differently. We can make different plans. We can make different social constructs, and we can set up alternative strategies for discipline, different ways to support teachers, to support children and families, the strategies and supports that educators really need. And I can say this very honestly as a pediatrician, we have sometimes 15, sometimes 30-minute visits with children who have experienced profound traumas are deeply melancholy or deeply sad. And as a parent and as a pediatrician, it wasn't until I really began working with educators that I had sense, what does it mean to have an 8-hour day with a child who's truly struggling and has deep hardships? And we often do not support or prepare teachers adequately for the role that they're playing and how essential that role is for that child and how much it takes and requires of the teacher to support it with inadequate systemic support. So we can do a much better job.
I have to comment. I think this is one of the best descriptions of teachers, what they come to, why they become teachers, and this whole discussion of there's no conscious malevolence here. I think this is one of the best descriptions I've heard, and I'm just so, I wish we could give this to everyone. But you said something else, you and Ryan, and that is we have to give this kind of professional development to teachers. And one piece of that development is understanding what's unconscious, but also understanding children better too. And understanding that if they have a toolbox, they can do it. So, you know, I think there was great wisdom that Comer Yates and Sandra and Dan and Ryan did when they put us together, Renee. I think they really were so wise to do this. But the things that I would like to suggest is that if only we could combine professional development that begins with the idea you can teach every child. You know, you can do this. And this is where science and psychiatry and pediatrics all comes together. The more teachers understand, and this goes, Ryan, to your question about what's explicit, the more teachers understand that the reading brain is complex, but it's also very basic. And we need to have structured literacy approaches that allow a teacher to address each of the parts of the reading brain that needs to be developed to become automatic and to become connected. This is complex, but it's simple too. But if it doesn't become automatic and proficient or fluent, whatever one word one uses, by the end of grade 3, you have a catastrophe happening at grade 4. Because the teacher in grade 4 has never been instructed on how to teach reading, doesn't know why some of her, especially boys of color, are acting out. She doesn't know that they can't read. And yet the assignments from grade 4 are ever more demanding. So we have an absolute catastrophe in place, but especially for 4th grade boys of color. And here's where I want to do if you will, I really want to recommend people read Sean Robinson, an African-American scholar who looks at boys of color who are dyslexic and gifted. And what's so almost funny is that Dr. Boynton Jarrett is just describing them. They're acting out. The teacher is disciplining them, thinking they're lazy, saying they're not working to potential as a way of masking you're not lazy or you can't do it, when he or she hasn't recognized there's a reason why they are acting out. There are reasons. What's the whole history here? And Sean Robinson and Julie Washington and Ryan, you who are Julie's student and one of my postdocs, Laura Reinhardt, we're all hoping that this work of Sean and Steve Graham and others can really push our understanding of what's going on that prevents our children at the end of grade 3, but especially our boys of color, from entering grade 4 and collapsing from then on. And this has been known for a long time, but we haven't expended the energy or the scholarly efforts to get out and go under it. So I have 2 things to summarize here. One, we need to get, and we're trying to do this desperately. I know Cox Campus is working on this many places across the country, especially under the Decoding Dyslexia people. We're trying to have a collaborative effort in our colleges of education so that the science of reading, this knowledge, goes into our young teachers. And like in LA Unified, has micro-credentialing for our teachers who are in the system to get this knowledge. And just as we have words that connote something that somehow blanks a person's mind, and racism is one of them. The minute some people hear racism, they stop thinking. Well, the same thing is now happening with the science of reading. People are, oh, we know what that is. Well, no. We need to know there is a body of knowledge. We don't care what you call it. It's a body of knowledge that gives teachers explicit knowledge to teach explicitly, not at the disadvantage of joy of reading stories and books and authentic literature, but as a combined effort to do so. So I really think Dr. Boynton Jarrett's knowledge base and this knowledge base need to be brought together for our teachers. And the end point is to make sure every child, that's the goal, that every child can have their best shot at reaching their potential.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you both for sharing. I just want to say what I hear from you, Marianne, is that the compact that you spoke about earlier, this new way of being for education is about, it's as much as it is about the teachers as it is for the kids, that we're really calling for access for teachers, access to the science so that they can build their professional competence and continue to grow in their knowledge, but access for children. In regard to what Renee is saying, is that kids have to have a way in, and adults have to help kids get there. And so this new compact is, this idea is one that I hope we can have time to comment on at the end, because we're going to get to Q&A now, because I think an important question is, what does this new compact look like? Given this community that is joining us this evening or this afternoon, depending on where you are, it could be morning, what does that new compact look like? And what's my role? What's Ryan's role in that new compact? And so I really hope that we can come back to that, because I mean, it's a fantastic way to sort of tie in everything that we've been talking about. But I want to ask a couple of questions, and hope that we have time for even more. So Renee, I want to ask you this question, and of course, Marianne, you can chime in. What is the value in asking and teaching children to listen rather than demanding or requiring that they're silent? Silent in line, in the hallways, silent at lunch, silent during the class period. What is the value in asking or teaching kids to listen as opposed to just being silent?
Oh, I think I just answer that question differently in the light of today, after everything that's happened in our nation over recent events. It's given me such pause to think about, what does it really mean to listen? What are you really willing to do? So I think we teach children many things when we encourage them to listen rather than asking them to be silent, right? We are actually inviting them into a learning and creative space. We are inviting them into relationship. You can have deeper connections with people. You can understand people in your world better if you are able to truly listen with an openness to hear what people have to say. So I think in many ways, we're strengthening so many skills that lead to stronger relationships, a greater sense of self-esteem and self-confidence, the ability to work more in community and cooperatively with others, all find their foundation in actually being able to listen and receive and hear other people's ideas, thoughts, emotions. So listening really sets a foundation for so many successes, things that we ultimately call the soft skills of leaders, of great team players, of great community, civically engaged members of the community. So listening invites that in. I think the other thing that happens that's important in listening is it's also a way of healing. So think of what's happening right now. There are no quick, easy solutions to any of this, right? Not to COVID-19. There isn't a quick, simple treatment and you're all better, and not to some of the racial tensions that we're experiencing. This will be a sustained effort where sometimes the most important thing you can do for someone is deeply care and be interested in their story and their experience. It's probably the most healing thing that can happen, is to listen with empathy. And so I think actually by inviting children to listen, we're helping to build their empathy, which is an incredibly powerful thing for children to learn. How do I grow my empathy? How do I care more about my peers, my classmates, my school, my community? So my aunt always says simply with children, you get out what you put in a sense of like, if what we give children are lots of materials, lots of purchased items, what will they give the world, right? And if what we give children community and connection in good times and bad, to care about other people, what will come from those children? What will they offer? What will we be able to learn from them?
Oh, beautiful.
Thank you. Marianne, I'm wondering if you have anything to add. As I'm listening to Renee, I know I'm thinking, as soon as she started on the benefits of listening, I immediately thought how you might want to add about this piece about empathy in the reading brain, and how so often we think about reading as this set of skills that will help us be able to get meaning or derive meaning from text, but we're not thinking about what listening does for critical thinking and empathy and all of these skills that really support a child's development.
Let me just make a tiny bridge between the two of you, only because of time. First, I couldn't agree more with the fact that if you have a relationship with a child and you have a toolbox, you have 2/3 a chance of succeeding. There are all kinds of other things you can't control, but you can control the knowledge and you control the relationship and the power of listening in that relationship. I want to just spend 1 or 2 minutes on empathy though, because I think it's one of the absolute most important endpoints or acmes of the proficient or deep reading brain. When we talk about the grade card and only 1/3 of our kids reaching proficiency, that is not my interest. My concern is that if you aren't proficient or automatic or fluent, you don't get to engage the most important processes in the deep reading brain. And those are bringing your background knowledge, increasing it, bringing and developing your inferential skills, bringing your ability to leave your perspective behind and try on another one, another person's feelings, another person's thought. This is the basis for empathy that grows over time. And together you put inference, analogy, background knowledge together, you get critical analysis that's informed by empathy. And there was a wonderful line, and I need to bring this absolutely up to a political context. There was a wonderful novelist, Jane Smiley, who said, are we going to lose reading? Are we going to lose the novel? And she said, no, but it could be sidelined. And if that kind of reading is sidelined, we won't have leaders who read and who therefore will never have developed the ability to have empathy for others. We need every 8th grader to have developed critical analysis and empathy. That's what is the basis of a democracy that listens to the various perspectives and viewpoints. So all that we're talking about from 0 all the way to grade 3 to grade 8 to adolescence, we're talking about the development of a society that is capable of sustaining a democracy because they know how to read, to listen, to think, and to feel what others are. Otherwise, our democracy will fail if we can't do that. So what we're talking about is not, these are high stakes. It's not simple. Oh, can they read? Can they not read? Can they? These are high stakes we're talking about.
And what I glean from that is, yes, high stakes, in that our communities, our world is dependent on having proficient readers, and not just for pleasure, right? The pleasure is great, but to be able to engage in this critical analysis that's informed by empathy. I have another question, and I think this is the last question given time. But we talked in the first part of this, as we were talking about children in the birth to 5 space, we talked about the importance of language and the importance of meaningful interactions for building language skills, and that those strong language skills will be the foundation for reading. And that as time goes on and kids learn to read and read more and more and become more proficient in reading, that they get all these benefits, empathy, critical thinking, and even enhanced oral language skills, that they become better speakers, better listeners, better writers even. So as we're thinking in the birth to 5 space, because I know we didn't get to this question before, what about, I just can't help but think about, given the conversation, that we have long-standing issues in our society, and that though our children today have been deeply impacted, we have generations and generations of families and adults who are caring for children who have also experienced some sort of trauma, who have also not had access. What if you are a parent who does not have access to reading? What if you're a parent who cannot access written code? What kinds of things can those families do to continue to build what we're talking about here? That how can those families be engaged in this new compact, even if they don't have access?
Well, we know across the world there are many rich oral traditions of narrative, of story, of passing down generational stories that teach children so many critical skills: how to solve problems, insight, how to resolve conflicts, how to be aware of safety and danger. So many invaluable lessons that are taught through oral traditions. We also know we live in a country where there was a point in time where people were enslaved and it was illegal for them to learn to read or write. So adaptations were made for sharing culture and history and knowledge. And we can embrace all of those as very part of our national story and each person's individual story. So I think there are opportunities for, and I think the thing we wouldn't want anyone to take away from this is that a parent's role is any less valuable, is any less important, is any less influential, depending on their reading ability. So I think the importance is that the parent is offering what they have to the child in relationship with the child. And the important thing is their presence and their consistency and their love. And we often won't talk about that when we talk about science. But the other thing to remember is community. You know, this is why we are organized in communities, so that no one caregiver has to actually have every skill in order for a child to succeed and to thrive and to grow. How do we set ourselves up in relationships so that in a child's social world, there can be many adults who are invested, who are sharing their gifts with that child, who are helping the child develop and learn new skills. So this is a part of kind of widening our circle of regard as to who can actually really be influential and make a difference in the life of a child. And we see in studies of kids who've been exposed to significant adversities that having a mentor, having someone who thinks you are special, that concept is a protective factor consistently. So someone who thinks you are special. So that is about how the child perceives you feel about them. Do you take an interest in them? There's no price tag on that, and there's no other equivalent to it. So at the end of the day, we have to remember that for all of the children we interact with in the community, are you willing to extend yourself to take an interest in that child? Because it makes a difference and it matters. It matters. All of us as adults can remember somebody who thought we were special, who wasn't a part of our immediate family.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
So, Renee, I almost hate to go after you. I don't even want to add to it, but I will because I have to. And I have to for a reason that's really odd. One of the things that I know we aren't going to get to because of time is what parents right now can do to help, regardless of their own literacy level, regardless of all the factors that we've been talking about for 2 hours. And that is, as I said earlier, technology has both the benefits and advantages and the disadvantages. But one of the advantages, and it's not, I mentioned this earlier, there have been experiments that show that non-literate grandmothers actually help the children learn on the computer with no skills of their own digitally or in terms of literacy. But it was that relationship, Renee, that you're talking about that was so important to say, you can learn this. Well, I just want to say to parents right now, we are all tethered multiple hours a day, and we have been using technology to help us. And I believe there, and a group of reading scholars across the country have been working with Yale. Cox Campus is working with them as well, to get a literacy organizer of activities from infancy to adolescence, of skills that have links to activities that are free, high quality, curated by this group. Most of them have evidence behind them, and that can help practice skills and enjoyment while we are all in this very amazing moment out of time which scares us, but which I hope that Renee and I and Ryan are trying to say there are hopeful elements that can benefit children by our examination of who we are as parents and educators. And here I will say that the Haskins Resource Library is a free resource. Cox Campus is one, Reading League is one. There are many things that our parents can do to help, but they should be part of it. That's to me the magic that Renee is emphasizing, and I would like that to be emphasized too.
Yes. Thank you, Mary Ann. Thank you, Renee. We're so grateful again. I keep saying it because we mean it. We're so grateful that you guys spent time with us. And of course, grateful for everyone who's joined us this afternoon, tuned in, hung around from part 1 to part 2. And if you weren't able to catch part 1, you are more than welcome. Please go back and view it on our Facebook Live. It's very dynamic. And I just want to close out by highlighting a couple of things. Really, one main thing. We came tonight, we convened because of our children. Our children need us now more than ever. They need us to be present now more than ever. But I want to come back to this idea of a new compact and relationships. We've talked about relationships between teacher and child and relationships between caregiver and child. And the more and more that I hear from you both is we're really talking about societal relationships, building a larger community, a network where there's all of these relationships that are playing a role for the betterment and the development of our children. And so I want us all, as we leave tonight, this evening, this morning, wherever you are, to think about your role in that new compact. What is your role in that new compact? And I'm thinking about the people that we engage with, like superintendents, district leaders, all kinds of folks that, lawmakers, politicians, who are responsible. I mean, all of us are responsible, but who have the power to do things at different levels. What is your new compact today with our society, keeping our children and families and educators top of mind? Finally, we wanted to mention and be sure that we included in this, because we didn't get to explore all of what we have to offer. We invite everyone, our experts here, as well as our audience around the world and nationally and internationally, to join us for our first week, which starts today, of our summer experiences on Cox Campus. And so experiences for families, educators in the birth to 5 and K to 3rd grade space. So we welcome everyone to join and take part in those experiences. Again, the work of Cox Campus and the Rollins Center at the Atlanta Speech School is grounded in the work of our 2 experts shown here on the screen, all about building relationship as a way to the moral laboratory, as we've talked about. And so we're inviting everyone to join us on a 5-week journey of fantastic summer experiences. Thank you so much, Dr. Wolf. Thank you, Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett. Thank you so much. And thanks to our audience. I can't forget our fantastic funders who make all of this possible, free and universally accessible. So thank you.
It was a privilege to work with you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity in creating this space.
Awesome. Well, we hope to see you very soon. And everyone, keep commenting, keep sharing. Sorry that we didn't get to all the questions. The conversation was so good, but please continue to pose questions and we will be sure to get back.